editor Zach Anderson. We're coming to you today from Tallahassee. I'm covering the Florida legislative session, and I'm in the office of State Representative Jim Boyd. Representative Boyd is a Bradenton Republican who is the third highest ranking member of the Florida House. He's one of the most influential lawmakers up here. Representative Boyd, thank you for talking to me today.
Thanks, Zach. I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you for being here. Let's jump right into what some of the big things that you've discussed in the House this week. There's been some big news that has come out on taxes, on Uber legislation, on fracking. You guys have done a bunch of different bills this week. The tax package that you rolled out, $1 billion in taxes, it was the same number as the governor, so that might bode well for harmony with the governor's office, but a little bit different approach. You guys, instead of just focusing on business taxes as the governor has, you looked at some sales tax, one-time sales tax reductions. Now, those are taxes that, kind of more impact average people. Is there a little bit of a philosophical difference here with the governor? Is he too focused on business taxes versus helping average taxpayers?
Well, the way the process works, the governor has his plan, the House and the Senate have plans, and then we try to meld them all together at the end that makes sense for Florida, and hopefully we all can agree. While the governor's tax package is certainly a good one, I like the House package because I think we are focusing, on families and individuals to a large extent. Certainly there's some business components that are important to all of us, the sales tax, rent, commercial rent
Sure.
piece, the manufacturing tax piece. So those are important, and those are important for Florida because they provide jobs, and hopefully Floridians, can be working. So those are all important, but I really appreciate the family and the individual tax cuts that will be coming. And
sure.
At the end of the day, $1 billion is a lot of money, and
yeah.
We still have to get our colleagues in the Senate to agree on any of that. So I have a good feeling that we'll kind of move down the road together, and before it's all over with, we can all agree on the different components that'll make that up.
But do you think House members are pretty adamant that there should be some taxes just for average people rather than business taxes?
Absolutely. I think we appreciate what businesses are doing in Florida, but businesses are made up of families, and individuals and families working really makes a difference. So their money back in their pockets, I think, helps them, help their families, and ultimately will help the economy as well.
Great. Well, let's move on to one of the bills that you guys passed off the floor last week. It wasn't a surprise. You guys passed it last year. It was this Uber legislation. The basics of it is that it basically just says that local governments can't regulate Uber, and it provides some minimum insurance requirements. It passed in a bipartisan fashion, seemed to be a fairly popular bill. It's similar to, cities such as Sarasota have basically also taken a hands-off approach to regulating Uber, but you guys have a little bit of a difference in the Senate where they're actually, looking at imposing some regulations that or kind of more in line with what the taxi cab companies want. What's going on there? Is there are the taxi cab companies flexing their muscle a little bit over there?
Taxi cab companies have been in business a long time in Florida, and I think some of this, as we call it, disruptive technology gets into their deal a little bit. Some of them, although, are starting to figure out ways they can compete in that market as well, which is good for Florida. In terms of our position on Uber, certainly we at the House agree there should be some guidelines and minimum standards that everybody follows. But some of that is we were starting to see a patchwork of different regulations around the state. So if, for instance, I'm in Bradenton and I want to take Uber to Sarasota for dinner, what they might have to do in Bradenton might be different than they have to do in Sarasota or all over the state. That could happen. So I think in this case, a statewide kind of policy is best,
right,
and allows them to compete. There's no reduction in standards or guidelines that they have to follow. The insurance component is important, so people can know that they're safe and protected when they're riding in an Uber car. But I use Uber. I think
Sure.
It's a great technology, and I think it's a great service to Florida. And I believe the taxi cab companies are big enough and successful enough, they'll figure out a way over the long haul to compete in that market, regardless.
You started in local government on the Palmetto City Council. You don't have concerns about preempting local government authority in this area at all?
I really don't. I'm all about local home rule in various applications of law and regulation. But when you have when you have regulations that are a patchwork, as I mentioned, that might be different all over the state, and when there's operators of whatever industry operating all over the state, it just makes it almost impossible for them to compete and do their job and run their business. So in this case, I think a statewide policy is a better choice.
Okay. Another bill that you guys passed off the floor yesterday was this fracking bill. More controversial, a lot of debate on that, pretty charged issue. You saw a more divided House. For those who don't know about the issue, basically the state put in some regulations so that hydraulic fracturing would be allowed for oil and gas. This has been a charged environmental issue. So a lot of environmental groups worry that there could be some environmental damage from fracking. Others think that it can be done safely and provide jobs. But in a state like Florida, where the environment is such a big part of the economy, some people would wonder, why take the risk? Is this going to really provide that much of economic incentive in the state, that much of economic development? What are your thoughts on that?
Sure. Well, first of all, Florida, the environment is critical, and I don't think there's a member up here on either side of the aisle that doesn't agree with that. This bill in particular, we've been fracking in Florida, I think, for 80 years or so, and very successfully with no incidents. This bill, and there was a lot of rhetoric and a lot of debate on what the bill wasn't really, and they debated against what they thought was allowing fracking, which we've been doing for a long time. This really actually puts in some standards, gives DEP some guidelines to work with, and some reporting and standards and the like that really actually makes the process safer. So it was a chance for many to rail on the idea of fracking itself, which is certainly a dialogue that we could have. And if individuals want to bring that up, or members of either caucus want to bring that up, in terms of should we or shouldn't we be fracking in Florida, that's a debate we could certainly have in a conversation. But this was actually, I think, since we are fracking already, we have been successfully and safely for a number of years. This adds guidelines and regulations, and I think makes the standards even tougher. So,
but fracking wasn't explicitly allowed in state law, was it? And now it will be. It had kind of been done because there was no specific regulation for or against it. Now you're pretty much saying we're okay with it, but we want these regulations.
Well, we want the regulations, and what's been done for, I think it's been 80 years, I might be a little bit off on my numbers, has been safe and successful. So now that we've been doing it, we haven't had issues. Let's make sure we put standards in place that protect the environment, protect Florida, and make this as safe as we can as legislators.
Great. Well, we'll see how that develops. Another big issue this session, there's been a lot of social issues that have come up. It seems like a little bit more in years past. There's a bunch of gun bills that are out there. There's a bill that's being called a religious freedom bill, the pastor protection bill, that basically says clergy and religious organizations shouldn't be targets of lawsuits if they decline to participate in same-sex marriages in any way. There's also a slew of abortion bills, including one of the most aggressive efforts to limit abortion. It's a near total ban on abortion. It hadn't gotten a hearing in 6 years, and finally got a hearing in the House this year. Is this kind of red meat election year stuff? What are your thoughts, or is this general kind of cultural differences that are still playing out?
I think it might be just ideological differences that are playing out. There's some members that are very passionate about some of those issues. They've been working on them, some of them their entire legislative time up here, and they keep bringing those bills up because they're passionate about them and important to them. So, as I tell people, there's a long way from the start to the finish line, and things can change. Bills can be amended or changed. So we still have a long way to go until we know exactly what's going to happen there. But I think most of it's more ideological than campaign oriented, for sure.
Okay. Well, speaking of campaign oriented, there's a big presidential campaign going on right now, and there's a Republican debate tonight. You are one of the most influential Republicans in one of the largest states in the country. What do you look for in the debate tonight?
Well, I guess the funny part of it is Donald Trump going to be there? Or not?
That's the big storyline. Trump pulling out of the debate. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I read this morning Cruz says, "Oh, absolutely, he'll be there." I don't know whether he will or not. He hasn't called me on the issue.
Yeah.
But
you've run campaigns, you've participated in debates. So what do you think? Pulling out of a debate, does that hurt you?
I don't know that it hurts him because I don't understand this
kind of
momentum.
It's gravity this year.
But I think if you're a candidate, you go to the debate. Whether you like the host, whether you like the moderator or not, you go to the debate.